What's up, squad? Welcome to the first episode of the Savagely Spoken Show. I'm your host, JSav, and this is a podcast where we are focused on empowering and enlightening the listeners through sharing experiences and stories that extract strategies and solutions that ultimately will help the listener navigate their own way to live in a more supreme lifestyle. Listen, man, I'm excited, I'm stoked, and I'm ecstatic to finally bring this show into fruition, into manifestation, and to see what this podcast platform will do to the listeners, what impact it will have on the community, and also what impact it will have on me as a person as I express myself and get other people to express themselves and dig deeper into who we are. On today's episode, I'll be doing some special segments for the show only that this show will have exclusively to set ourselves aside from different podcasts out there. I will also be introducing myself, sharing some fun facts, sharing some details, and sharing some background information about myself. And I'll be sharing to you guys why I started this podcast and what impact I wanted to have on the community. So, with no further ado, let's get right into it, man. So, I will start this episode off with what we call a supreme saying. This segment of the podcast will be where I share a quote of the day or a phrase that is impactful to me and that I think will be meaningful to share to the rest of the community, all the listeners here at the Sav Squad. So, let's get into it. Today's supreme saying is, persistently pursue progress towards your God-given purpose. Never back down, never give up, no surrender, no retreat. This right here is not only just a quote, but this is also the Sav Squad mantra right here. Persistently pursue progress towards your God-given purpose. Never back down, never give up, no surrender, no retreat. Breaking this down, the importance of this is that persistence is pushing through even when it gets rough. And when God calls you up, He will help you out. He always accompanies you on the journey and empowers you to do all things and gives you the strength and protection to win any battle. So in this first part, persistently pursue progress towards your God-given purpose. Speaking on that, you have to stay persistent when it gets rough and life gets hard, because anything great and worth fighting for will come with its challenges. You have to stick it through. You have to have the resilience to keep going, not only just because you feel like you're strong enough, but also because purpose gives us life. And when God gives you that purpose, it's eternal life. So you have to make sure that you remember that. Because God always will never give you a burden that you can't handle. Literally, he equips you with armor every time that you go out. So when you're on His mission, you have to know that you're backed up by the all high and mighty force that will never leave you alone. That will never leave you broken and leave you destroyed, unless it's to build you up and to make you into something stronger. So you have to stay persistent on your pursuit of your purpose. In the second half of this, never back down, never give up, no surrender, no retreat. Listen, when you outlast the pain, on the other side is the prize. When you outlast the pain, on the other side is the prize. You don't lose when you fall. You lose when you surrender and you stop fighting. Just think about it. When you in that boxing match, and you giving blow for blow, and you finally get knocked down, you're not out for the count as soon as you fall down. You out when you say that enough is enough, and I can't get back up, and I've lost the fight because I surrendered to keep going. And listen, life throws some blows, but you always have to get back up and keep fighting. Because once again, you don't fight, you don't lose when you fall. You lose when you surrender and you stop fighting. So keep fighting, keep getting back up, never give up, never back down, no surrender, no retreat. And once again, the quote is persistently pursue progress towards your God-given purpose, never back down, never give up, no surrender, no retreat. So that is our supreme saying for the day. Marinate on that, come back to this, and let that be the aura and the energy for this week, for this month, and for the rest of the life. That is the savage spirit, and that is the savtality. The mentality of the savage is to fight until the death. Never give up, never back down, no surrender, no retreat. All right. So moving right along, I will be sharing with the squad. I'm JSav, Javante Jones. I'm a music artist and also a motivational speaker, and now turned podcast host. I really have a deep love for just wisdom, knowledge, esoteric thought patterns, perspectives, and understanding how people work and turning it into a force of empowerment and motivation. So I do a lot of listening to podcasts, motivational speakers, going to motivational speaking events, whether it's a preacher, whether it's a pastor, whether it's an athlete or anything. I feel like that we can all pull from each other's knowledge and experiences. So I always have an open ear, and I'm a sponge when it comes to knowledge. I love storytelling as well. I love stories that are put together well, and you have to dissect them and pull out what it means to you. Along with that, I'm a normal human, so I got my normal stuff that I like too. I like sports, I like movies, I like music, and eating, and adventurous activities. I like hiking, traveling, and just doing a lot of new stuff that I don't normally do, because life is all about the experience. So I try to experience as many things as I can, and never really turn down anything, because you never know what you're going to get out of what you do. And the more you know, the more you grow. So I try to experience as much as I can. That's one of my hobbies, is just literally trying new things. I came from a single parent household. My mom is the GOAT, the real MVP. She put on for us and did a lot of work to craft me into a respectable and honorable man. So shout out to Mom. I was born in Iowa and raised in Chicago. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people just believe that I was been in Chicago my entire life, because my roots are so deep in Chicago, and that's what's instilled in me and where I spent most of my life, where most of my family is. So a lot of people didn't know that I was actually born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at St. Luke's Hospital. I moved there from a very young age because of life and stories that I will share with y'all later down the line. But I'm just giving y'all the basic rundown for now. So I was born in Iowa and raised in Chicago. And I moved a little bit of everywhere in life. So I have a pretty blended life experience when it comes to traveling and moving around and being around different types of people and adjusting to different cultures and communities. I have the taste of both privileged and more poor lifestyles, the struggle and the luxury of life. So I know not to take anything for granted and be grateful for all things in life, because whether you're at the bottom or at the top financially, you can always be pulled out of that place and put somewhere else. So you have to be centered in who you are and your capabilities and the God that you serve, to know that no matter where you are, there's a standard of a person that you have to be, and don't let the environment make you, but you make the environment. I have worked a lot of jobs, I'll say. I've worked jobs in logistics. I've worked in warehouses, packing boxes, doing a lot of hard labor. I've worked in a woodwork shop before. I've worked at Goodwill. Actually, that was one of my first real jobs. I was at ASM, After School Matters. It was like a sports youth, employment program, to where it was really more fun than work. But that was kind of my first job. But my real first job was Goodwill. I worked at Goodwill and was with my girlfriend there at the time. Crazy time in life, but that was my first job. And from there, I've worked at like UPS. I worked at Amazon and FedEx, and a lot of different other warehouses. My last warehouse job was a chicken factory where they killed and mass produced chickens. So imagine that as a vegetarian. Another fun fact that a lot of people don't know until they meet me and have that conversation with me is that I'm a vegetarian. So that was crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Working in a chicken factory, watching chickens get killed, and having to be a part of that shipment process was crazy as a vegetarian. But the things that we do in life to survive, right? Which leads to where I am now. I got sick of the lifestyle that I was living, working jobs that I was uncomfortable with, and doing a lot of hard work, but never feeling truly compensated for that work, and not getting enough benefits and check to check and the whole 9 yards. So I got sick of it, and I figured that I had to change the trajectory of my life and make a big sacrifice. And now I am here serving in the United States Army as an 88 mic motor transport operator, or in shorter terms, the Amazon for the Army. I ship and deliver weapons, I maintenance vehicles. We basically get whatever needs to be needed wherever it needs to be. We are the supply spearhead of the Army, and that is where I am now. So that's a little bit about me and where I'm at in life. Over the course of this podcast, we will get a lot deeper into my story, my lifestyle, and other things. But for now, that's pretty much just a little bit of a quick rundown of who I am and some of the things that I like to do and get into, and where I'm at in life right now. For this next segment of the pod, I want to give what I call a savage shout out, which really speaks for itself. It's just one of the people from the Sav squad in my life, in my orbit, in my path that I've walked, that I feel like embodies the spirit of the savage, and is out here doing a thing. So I want to give a special savage shout out to Marcel Hyde over at Marcel Mindset Podcast. If you want to check him out again, the Marcel Mindset Podcast is MARCEL Mindset. MARCEL Mindset. The Marcel Mindset Podcast. He's a great guy, man. Great energy, great vibe, always like authentic and genuine. And he's the second person to ever have me on his podcast show. This was before I had the aspiration to be a podcaster myself, which is one of the things that inspired me to really get into my podcast, is seeing how he worked and seeing how passionate he was about everything that he does. And finally, when I got on his podcast and we just had the deep intellectual exchange that we did have, and I felt like that conversation was very impactful and helpful if you actually listen to it and tap into the messages and conversation that we were having. And I just want to give him a shout out because he's super dedicated, bro. He's super dedicated. He's consistent and he's passionate. He really cares about getting these meaningful and helpful messages out into the world and truly helping people with sharing his life's experiences and perspectives that he feels are uplifting to the community. So he's a super positive, super impactful person to the world, and I'm very grateful for being able to have crossed paths with him over the internet. he seeing my work, me seeing his work, and us really like creating a bond over the internet that is very much could be stronger than a lot of people's that are in person. So we get together and we produce things that help uplift the world in a positive way. And another thing about him is that we build each other up, bro. Like, from the first time I've been on his podcast, we were just back and forth bouncing off of each other's ideas. We had no idea how it was going to go, but like it was like a magical connection to where we didn't even really want to end the pod. And we had to end it because it was just going to go on and on and on. And we will eventually have another co-episode. You know, he'll hop on mine, I'll hop on his again. But that was crazy. And even in that, you know, I had saw that he didn't have his podcast on Apple Music and Spotify and stuff like that. He had his stuff on YouTube. It was a YouTube podcast, you know, just a video podcast. And I am an insightful person, and I like really examine my people and try to give my input to where I feel like they can help improve themselves, because I care about all my boys got to eat. So, you know, I gave him just a simple nudge. Like, I really think you should have this podcast on all platforms, because you have something that the world needs to hear and should not be limited. And, you know, a lot of people don't always go on YouTube because it's not as easy to just plop into your ear and wash the dishes or go work out or, you know, do the leisure things that we do while we listen to podcasts. So I gave him that little 2 cents of information, and ever since then, literally the next episode, he had everything on all platforms. And that is what I respect about him, his urgency to execute. And, you know, I don't do things with the intent of a return. But, you know, when you are genuine and you do things out of the love of people and the love of God and love of the neighbors, it pours back into you. Because now, as I get on the journey of podcasting for myself, I had a resource to go to that I respected his work and, you know, his dedication and his production. So I went to him and I asked him some pointers on starting a podcast, you know, different platforms to put things out on, timing, schedules, and just different websites and resources. And he was no hesitation to help me out. He didn't gatekeep anything. And, you know, he really was just really real and helpful. So, you know, that I just savage shout out to my boy Marcel Mindset. Go check his podcast out, the Marcel Mindset Podcast on Instagram. You can go follow him on YouTube. His podcast is out there on Spotify, Apple Music, on all platforms, the Marcel Mindset Podcast. And that'll be it for the Savage Shout Out section of the show. So, on to our next part. I, of course, have to share the why. Like, a quote from one of my, if not my favorite motivational speakers, Eric Thomas. With a strong enough why, you can overcome any how. So when I started this podcast, I had to come up with a strong enough why that when I started, I wouldn't fizzle out and give up and not be consistent, and just make sure that I have a blueprint of what to stick to and not let this podcast go off the rails in terms of the content of it. Because there's a lot of podcasts out here that are not uplifting the community. So I had to make sure that when I came out with my vision and my purpose for this pod, that it was very strong enough for me to stay aligned with a podcast that God would promote. So the reason why I started this podcast ultimately was to use wisdom, stories, and experiences of others to help my listeners find different strategies to empower themselves with different ways to navigate through life's challenges, to heal their trauma, and to activate a better version of themselves. because I believe that wise counsel and mentorship through constructive conversations is very necessary for the healthy development of youth and a strong and wise collective mindset for us all, but especially helping the youth and leading them to a better lifestyle. And not just the youth, but especially the youth. Because growing up, I lacked that figure that was a mentorship figure, and definitely a masculine figure, and not to downplay the feminism, the feminine energy, because my mom did a great job of playing both parts as much as she could, and instilled some very good morals and mindsets and strength inside of me. But of course, you yearn for that masculine leadership in your life, and I didn't have the best role models or masculine figures to look up to into my life. So I feel like it's very important for us to have those outlets and those resources to go to as far as mentorship. And so this is where I'll start my mentorship journey outside of motivational speaking, is on my podcast. I aim to have my conversations be an outlet to where people like my younger self can come to and get different perspectives and stories on life that they can relate to, and listen to how we navigated through those things, and use that as a kind of guideline to help themselves to navigate themselves through these things. Because I know for a fact that if I would have had just the right person to listen to and guide me through certain things in life, that I wouldn't be exactly where I'm at now. And I say that with a grain of salt, because I know that I don't regret my life. Everything that happened to me led me to become the man that I am now. So I just do know that it would have been easier to have, a blueprint and a guide to help me navigate through some things that I felt alone on. So with this podcast, I aim to provide that space of mentorship and counsel for my listeners. And not just like a big brother, little brother type of mentorship, but like a friend. I can be whatever you need me to be. I could be a friend. I could be a mentor. I can be a brother. But my ultimate aim is to help people empower themselves and enlighten themselves through constructive conversations. So that is my whole aim for this podcast, and I'll keep working on myself, working on my abilities, my understanding, my perspective, healing myself, and through that healing journey and through that learning journey, sharing the tactics and strategies that I use to overcome those things and heal myself. And hopefully the people who are listening can take from that and apply it to their lifestyles, so that we can all become a more empowered world together. So to wrap this episode up, I'm going to give my supreme savage suggestion. I like to come up with little acronym names for things, so you'll see that a lot throughout my podcast and the segments that I do. But simply put, it's just my greatest piece of advice to end the show. So my supreme savage suggestion for today is that God is the coach. And when he gives you the game plan, the vision, or the mission, just do it. It ain't nothing to it but to do it. Do it scared, do it tired, do it hurting, and most of all, do it now. Your destiny is in the hands of your deeds. What you do takes you to your destination. So you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing taking me to where I want to be? Because look, it's okay to research, to plan, and prepare. But most of all, prioritize execution. Because you are known for what you do, not for what you plan, or for what you research, or for what you think, or for your ideas. You are known for your actions and for your deeds. And once again, your deeds take you to your destiny. So always manage, analyze, and be aware of the impacts of your actions when in correlation with destiny that you want to manifest. I believe that I had to really analyze that within myself over this past year, really. I mean, I'm always in an introspective type of mindset, looking into myself and trying to see where I can do better and be better. But really intensely, like I said about the thinking and the doing part, I always think about stuff. But this last year, I feel like I really got into the mode of execution. So with this podcast, it's an accountability thing as well. I was supposed to start this podcast last year. I had the dream and the wish to start this podcast last year. But the difference and the bridge between dreams and destiny is action. So I was doing a lot of planning, I was doing a lot of researching, and I was doing a lot of procrastination because there came a point where I was over planning and over researching, and I had enough to start my podcast. I had the equipment, I had the skill, I had the stories, I had the experiences, and I had the passion to do it. But I just didn't have the will and the discipline to execute. So I look back now, and I think if I would have started this podcast when I was ready, when I was truly ready, like on the planning note, on the planning side, all right, I got enough information, let me go out here and do this. Then at this point now, if I would have already been in the flow and probably had over 20 or so, or maybe even more episodes out, and had a fan base built around it and really been having this thing rolling, if I would have executed when I know I needed to, when I know I had enough, and when I know I could. Discipline is very, very key. Discipline is doing what you need to do when you need to do it, regardless of how you feel. So when you get that hunch, when you get that conviction in your heart that it's that time. I know I need to do this. I know I've been procrastinating. I know I've been pushing this off. I know that I can be doing this right now, but I'm not doing it. It's time to do it. So once again, do it scared, do it tired, do it hurting, and most of all, do it now. Whatever your it is, get out there, get after it, and go do it. Because God is waiting on you to fulfill your destiny, and the world is waiting on you to manifest your destiny. Because when you live your life to the fullest, you inspire other people to live their life to the fullest. You inspire other people with your light. So bring your light to the world. Create the creations inside of you and manifest your visions into reality. This is the first episode of the Savagely Spoken Show. And that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening. I need you guys to follow the Instagram, Savagely Spoken Show. I need you guys to subscribe to the YouTube, Savagely Spoken. And I need you guys to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you are listening to this now. and hit those notification bells so you can be the first to hear my upcoming episodes. Once again, thank you all for listening. And remember to always strive for supremacy and stay savage.